So, welcome to another weekly meeting of the Scope community. I was expecting the attendance to be considerably lower, taking into account that DockerCon is happening right now. But I'm glad to see that there's quite a few people at the meeting. First, I would like to welcome new attendants. I don't know if Prashant was in the meeting before. You were, right?
Yes, I was there last week.
Yeah. All right. I'm pretty sure that Shandan wasn't at the meeting before, if I'm pronouncing the name properly. Shandan, would you mind introducing yourself? All right. Maybe the audio is not working. Anyways, just let us know if you got audio to work. I think congratulations are in order to Uma and his team for merging the PVC pull request, which is gonna allow Kubernetes users to see their volume. So thanks a lot for creating the pull request and making the effort of adding all the refinements we maintainers asked to do.
Sure. No, yeah, thank you, and thanks a lot to Brian for his coaching. I think they definitely learned a lot about the scope, and next PRs would be much easier because we really appreciate taking time to coach the team. Of course, I was not really involved in the coding, but I heard from team that there's been considerable effort from Brian also to coach back. So thank you. And yes, it's a good start. It's a fundamental piece. So I think we're off to a good start. Yeah.
All right. Thanks a lot. The next item in the meeting is actually added by Uma, which is discussing possible next steps on storage extensions to scope. Since the initial PR is accepted, can you elaborate on what you would like to see in terms of extensions? You mentioned it on the scope channel, but it would be good that you elaborated on it.
Sure. So the idea is, I keep talking to the team here, and then Portworx team, Eric and Prashant also, they wanted to pitch in. And see, hey, why don't we collaborate a little more on this? And they're also interested in adding more capabilities on the metrics side, and that's why I heard their interest is coming from. So what I was thinking was, snapshots and clones are being added by Kubernetes recently, and there's an effort to move that capability to in-tree. I would say it's a bit of a still development feature, but there are users using snapshots and clones already in Kubernetes, and that's a natural extension to a PVC process, right? Once the storage volumes are provisioned by the user, day two operations will be about data protection, and that's one area that we wanted to get scope visibility, right? And I was also not sure whether scope community thinks a kind of an administrative actions would be considered part of scope of the scope, right? Is scope really seen as just an observing tool, or can we expect a user to take a snapshot of a volume using scope, right?
Yeah. Okay, go on.
That's one area, and other area is also, there is another parallel effort being done by Kubernetes and Mesos community to bring in a more standard approach to attach the volumes. That is the CSI initiative. So most of the vendors are expected to write a new provisioner through the CSI spec, right? And when that happens, and of course, we are at the beginning of it, we have a working plugin already through the CSI. I'm sure other vendors are also doing the same. When that happens, the provisioner plugin will have the capability to mount and manage the connection of the storage volume to the pod, right? Right now it's done by Kubernetes, and that capability is being given to the provisioner implementers like ourselves, OpenEDS. So when that happens, there's a lot more we can do in scope. For example, what's the status of the connection from the application point of view? Right now, it's just says the application and the PVC is bound to the pod or not. In CSI plugin, when it is live, we can say that the status of the storage connection is in a read-only mode or it's all working. Right? It's a bidirectional status we can show, and that's one of the most common problems that we have been hearing. If there is a chaos in network or some other problem, the connection breaks, right? And then the application will not have the connectivity to the underlying storage. And we want to be able to show that, as a hotspot or an observable entity, right? So that's one area I thought we could collaborate, and that's something that users will definitely appreciate, right? Everything is working fine. I have 200 PVCs, and then but 2 of them are having a problem. How do I show that, right? And that's when scope can become very useful, right? So that's another area I was thinking we could start working on.
Right. So you've mentioned a bunch of things. One of them is whether scope could display other volumes and mounts and so on, and I would say that's the case. It's a matter of how we modeled it. So I think it would make sense to create a design proposal that we can go through and read before you you get hands-on on the code. Regarding things like connectivity and so on, you brought up displaying that through edges, right? Which I think is the right way to do it. I don't know if Brian will agree. And even if I recall properly, the report data structures prefer to do that. It has something called metadata on the edges, or at least it used to, on the endpoint topology, to which you could add properties on edges, and we could display in the UI. Regarding whether scope is an administrator tool, it really could be, and it is in some senses. You have something called control, which you probably have seen. When you click on a node, you get a pane on which you can do different things depending on the object you are on the node you're clicking on. For instance, you can stop and start containers. You can see logs of pods. You can open a terminal on a pod, well, actually in a container or in a host. And I guess we could apply the same action for mounting, right? You could add a control to a PVC, right, and make a mounting action. I'm not familiar with CDI, so maybe I'm not CSI. Sorry, so maybe I'm not modeling it correctly. But I think that through controls you should be able to perform actions like mounting.
Yes, that's a good point. The one small difference I could see is I understand today you can start containers, and that's an administrative action. One difference with snapshots is when you create a snapshot, you're creating a new metadata, right? So that's a new configuration you're generating, right? And that needs to be stored somewhere. And later, I want to restore the data from a snapshot, right? And so it's little more than just a starting type of administrative action. And this kind of things are usually done by whatever is the administration tools that the administrator has, for example, through the DevOps tools or some other storage management tools, right? My intention is try to link it in some way to a single source of truth somewhere, right? If they're managing the configuration through a GitHub YAML somewhere, so when you take a snapshot through Scope, there could be a value add if we go and update the newly created snapshot into that single source of truth. These are just thoughts. My idea also is to go and create a design proposal, put all these thoughts out, and then take them through you and Brian and the team on Portworx, and then really debate and design it properly.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I don't think we should be discussing the nitty-gritty details on this call.
Right.
For one, because I'm not familiar with CSI, and I would like to do so before contributing to the discussion. But I think that as a rule of thumb, we should use the existing, let's say, data model and infrastructure we have on Scope. And if we need to extend it in any way, then sure, we should do it. But I think the most important thing is to make it fit with the rest of data we're representing in a consistent way.
Sure.
I would like to know what are the opinions of Brian as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure I have a lot to add. I mean, we got to walk the line between much of the architecture is meant to be very generic, and then at some point you have to do things that are very specific to storage or whatever, the particular thing that you're in. So that I think is one of the interesting parts to figure out how to do that. I mean, there's a bunch of fairly specific things in there at the moment, so we can't sort of say there's no specific stuff goes in. But it's an interesting point anyway, the how to walk that line. And then in some cases we may want to change the way things are done because it's just not that convenient. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't get stuck on what's been done in the past. Which that doesn't necessarily make it any easier, because it's a big complicated program, and it can be pretty hard just to figure out what was done in the past. Anyway, some thoughts.
All right, good. So what do you think about the
Yeah, one quick addition. So we are working with Uma and team, and I think the idea is good. We'll have to take a look, Uma, at the snapshot creation methodology, because that's where I think as you said, some of the config information that you store can be different, and depending upon how we support it versus how it's done in Kubernetes, there might be some minor differences. So we'll have to take a look at that. So I think the design proposal idea sounds good to us, and we can obviously help you review that, and then we can take it from there.
Sure. So I think the consensus is one of us need to put out all these thoughts into a design PR, and likely changes that we might bring in, we want to bring into Scope. I don't anticipate too much, but I don't know a lot of history, obviously. So we'll put out all these thoughts and create a PR, and then we'll take it further, right? A general philosophical question is what I wanted to know, how you guys think, whether it's just an observing tool or you want to make it more of a administration.
No, yeah, we definitely have active parts in there at the moment. You can restart containers, you can delete pods. You can open the terminal window. There's already quite a number of active things, so it's definitely not observe only.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with Brian. So I don't think it would be breaking any philosophical barriers there. It would
Okay.
fit quite well to perform actions at the storage level. So you were mentioning a design PR. We could do design PR, or maybe we could do a design Google Docs, because it's very convenient to write comments there. Or maybe
Okay.
I don't know what it might. I mean, I think it would be more flexible to do a Google Doc.
Sure. Yeah, I agree with that. Google Doc is better for collaborating. Yeah.
Just circulate it on the scope channel and or the mailing list when you feel comfortable with it, or even earlier if you don't want to disclose it openly. You can maybe share it earlier with me or Brian to get early feedback. If you
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Thanks, Gons. We'll do that. Yeah.
No problem. And we don't really have any other agenda items for today, unless anybody wants to bring up anything. All right. Well, thanks a lot, and congrats again for the PR.
Thank you.
Have a great week. And for those who are watching and went to DockerCon, I hope you had a great time. I'll see you next week.
All
Thanks
right.
a lot, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.